So good evening friends. So before going into the inheritance, pattern of inheritance, Mendel's laws, we'll just look into certain terminology. So if we see at the term inheritance, so it is like all the characters of an individual which are inherited from parents through genetic components. So usually in genetic disorders, the expression of the character in an individual depends on the category of the disease. Next one is the allele. An allele is a variant form of a gene. Every gene will have two alleles. Then what is homozygous and heterozygous? An individual is called homozygous for the gene if he has two identical copies of the same allele for that gene. Then if an individual has non-identical copies of the same allele, the individual is called heterozygous for that gene. Then dominant versus recessive. In heterozygous condition, if one allele is expressed and another allele is masked, then the expressed allele is called dominant and the masked allele is called recessive. Then what is a polygenic trait? So a polygenic trait is a character that is determined by more than one gene. So then phenotype versus genotype. The phenotype is an outward physical characteristic manifestation of the organism, and the genotype is the total genetic makeup of an individual that determines the phenotype. If you see the genetic disorders, so genetic disorder is a condition caused due to an abnormality in the genome of an individual. So three basic classifications like a single gene disorder, also called Mendelian disorders, defect in a single gene. These follow the Mendel's pattern of inheritance. Then chromosomal disorders, defect in the number or structure of chromosomes. Then multifactorial disorders, defective interaction between genes and environmental factors. So you can see here homozygous tall, capital T and capital T, heterozygous tall, capital T and small t, homozygous dwarf, small t and small t. Now coming to the Mendel's laws. So law of segregation. A pair of contrasting character in a hybrid form remains together without mixing with each other and segregates during formation of gametes. So this is law of segregation. You can see here. So this is tall and this is tall, and here it is dwarf and here it is dwarf. So when in the first generation, so pure tall and pure dwarf, first generation resulted in all tall pea plants. So this is heterozygous. Now crossing the heterozygous, you can see the second generation, pure tall, then heterozygous tall and dwarf. So here the plants are either tall or dwarf. They are not intermediate. So that is law of segregation. Then law of independent assortment. Two parents differing from each other in two or more pairs of contrasting characters inherit one pair of character independent of another pair of character. Now if you see here, so this capital R stands for round, capital Y stands for yellow. So this is round and yellow seeds, and here it is a plant with wrinkled and green seeds. But if you see this, you can see here it is a wrinkled seed and yellow colored. Here you can see the rounded seed and green colored. That means yellow and round did not go hand in hand. So both characters are independent of each other. That is called law of independent assortment. Then law of dominance. So crossing between organisms for contrasting characters of a pair, only one character appears in the first generation and another does not appear. So the one which appears is the dominant character and the one which does not appear is the recessive character. So every character is controlled by a pair of genes. So this is law of dominance. So now if you see here, tall and dwarf. But in the first generation, you see only tall pea plant. Dwarf is not exhibited. So the tall is dominant and the dwarf is recessive. So law of incomplete dominance. Some characters are neither dominant nor recessive. They are expressed midway between two parents. So for example, you can see the red flowers cross-pollinated with the white flowers. The first generation is pink flowers. Neither the flowers are red nor white. It is midway between pink flowers. This is law of incomplete dominance. So these are few dominant characters in humans. If you see the eye color, brown is the dominant, recessive is blue. So rarely we see this. If you see the hair, curly dark is the dominant, straight and light is recessive. Rarely we see this. Eyesight, normal. So everyone have normal vision. So color blindness is recessive. And earlobe, it is free and here it is attached. Now, so what is a Punnett square? It's a diagram or chart which is used in genetics to predict or show all possible outcomes of a particular cross or breeding experiments. So now you can see here. So this is for Punnett square, cross pollination between homozygous tall and heterozygous tall. You can see these are the all possible combinations. And here you can see all possible combinations for yellow round and wrinkled and green seeds. You can see a ratio of 9 is to 3 is to 3 is to 1. So you can see yellow round 9, yellow round 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9. And if you see yellow and wrinkled, so 1, 2 and 3. And if you see green and round, 1, 2 and 3. And if you see green and wrinkled, it is 1. So 9 is to 3 is to 3 is to 1. These are all possible combinations for two contrasting characters. So pedigree chart. A pedigree chart is a diagram to show the family relationships and the mode of inheritance of a particular genetic disorder. It also helps in predicting the probability of appearance of any particular genetic disorder among the offspring. So it uses certain symbols. So let us see it. So you can see the normal square. So this is a plain square, normal male, circle, normal female. So this is unspecified gender. So this is a female carrier. You can see here the darkened square is affected male, affected female, affected unspecified gender. So deceased male and deceased female. So this vertical line is the line of descent. So this is a stillborn baby with unknown sex. So identical monozygotic twins, non-identical dizygotic twins. So consanguineous marriage. So heterozygous for autosomal recessive. Horizontal line represents the relationship. So this represents the marital relationship. So these are the parents with offspring, and you can see this arrow, individual seeking genetic counseling or testing. There are a few more symbols like in the square. If you see, there are 2. So these are the number of normal siblings. Here you can see the number of 5 normal siblings. So n, the unknown number of siblings. So this is pregnancy, normal. And here you can see the affected fetus confirmed on prenatal diagnosis. So you can see both parents adopted a son. So that is why dotted line. So both parents given the son or given the son for adoption. So see, the baby is born for them. That is why this is a descendant vertical line. But here the baby is being adopted. So it is a dotted line. Now you can see the sperm donor. See, this is a sperm donor. That's why male. And here you can see ovum donor. So this line, this horizontal cut in the descendant. So this indicates vasectomy or tubectomy. And here you can see the break in the relationship. So father, mother and baby, but there is a break in the relationship. Here you can see the infertile male. Here you can see the infertile female. So you can see the unknown cause of infertility. And you can see unknown family history. And you can see the surrogate mother. So father donated the sperm, mother donated the ovum, but the developing fetus is growing in the womb of the surrogate mother. So here mother did not donate the ovum, father donated the sperm, and the surrogate mother donated the ovum. So surrogate mother's ovum fertilized with the sperm from male partner of the couple. And here you can see affected individual positive for mutation. So now modes of inheritance. You can see, so before going to the modes of inheritance, we'll see the significance of the Mendel's laws. So what is the importance of those three laws? It is useful in understanding inheritance pattern of human diseases, especially in monogenic inheritance. So useful for improving life and preventing the passage of diseases to next generations. So part of eugenics. So it also helps in increasing agricultural production and other animal products. It also eliminates recessive disorders with the help of genetic counseling. So if you see the pattern of inheritance, monogenic inheritance is a kind of inheritance where a trait is determined by expression of a single gene. So polygenic inheritance, inheritance of genetic disorders occurring because of abnormality in more than one gene, called polygenic inheritance. So these do not follow the Mendelian pattern, but monogenic inheritance follows the Mendelian part. These are called Mendelian disorders because the inheritance pattern follows the Mendel's laws. So multifactorial inheritance, when polygenic disorders occur in association with lifestyle and environmental factors, they are called multifactorial disorders. So mitochondrial DNA inheritance. So when DNA present in the mitochondria of the mother is inherited by the offspring, it is called mitochondrial inheritance. So monogenic inheritance, you can see the classification: autosomal dominant and autosomal recessive. And in allosomes, X-linked dominant, X-linked recessive, and Y-linked inheritance. So mitochondrial inheritance is called maternal inheritance because all the mitochondria come from the ovum, and Y-linked inheritance is called as holandric inheritance. So let us see autosomal dominant. So in autosomal dominant disorder, even if a single abnormal gene on one of the 22 autosomes is present, it is expressed phenotypically and produces a disorder. So for autosomal dominant state, heterozygotic state will result in mild disease, whereas homozygotic state will result in severe disease. So what are the common features? So affects irrespective of the sex of the individuals. You can see both males and females are equally affected. Affects all generation. You see in all generations there is disease. So 50% of offsprings of affected individuals will be normal and 50% will be affected if one of the parent is affected. You can see here, so one parent is affected, one parent is not affected. You can see in the children 50% normal and 50% affected. So normal child is not carrier. So affected gene may be transmitted from parents or by new mutation during gametogenesis. So variable in clinical expression. So these are the few diseases like achondroplasia, familial hypercholesterolemia, holoprosencephaly, Huntington chorea, Marfan syndrome, myotonic dystrophy, neurofibromatosis 1, osteogenesis imperfecta, polycystic kidney disease, Waardenburg syndrome, then tuberous sclerosis or Bournville pharyngeal disease, Treacher-Collins syndrome or mandibulofacial dysostosis. Here, few genes are the factors which are responsible for these defects. Now, autosomal recessive. If you see autosomal recessive disorders, both the copies of allelic genes are abnormal, then only a disease is expressed. So for autosomal recessive state, heterozygotic state, no disease. Homozygotic state, disease is expressed. Males and females are equally affected. You can see here males and females are equally affected. Prediction, 25% children will be affected, 25% will be normal, and 50% will be carriers. You can see here 25% affected, 25% normal, and 50% carriers. The unaffected child will transmit the disease like carrier. You can see here, so this is a carrier, and if it is a pure unaffected child, it means both the genes are normal, so they cannot transmit the disease. Only the carriers can transmit the disease. So here the child is completely unaffected, so he cannot transmit the disease, but in these two cases they are carriers. So disease is not expressed, but still they are carriers, they can transmit the disease. So these are few disorders with autosomal recessive pattern: cystic fibrosis, Gaucher's disease, hemochromatosis, phenylketonuria, Tay-Sachs disease, xeroderma pigmentosum, sickle cell anemia, alkaptonuria, albinism, spinal muscular dystrophy. So if we compare and contrast dominant versus recessive, especially the autosomal. So in autosomal dominant, even if a single allele gene is present, it expresses and produces disorder. So here both copies of the allele genes should be abnormal to produce the disease. So heterozygous individual affected mild disease, homozygous individual affected severe disease, heterozygous individual normal, homozygous individual affected. An unaffected individual cannot transmit the disease. An unaffected individual can transmit the disease if he or she is a carrier. No carrier state present. So it is known as hereditary disease. It is known as familial disease. Consanguineous marriage, not significant effect on autosomal dominant, whereas consanguineous marriage increases the risk of autosomal recessive inheritance. Achondroplasia, Marfan syndrome, here cystic fibrosis, phenylketonuria, sickle cell anemia, so many others. So now X-linked dominant. X-linked dominant inheritance is a pattern of inheritance that involves mutated dominant genes of X chromosomes. So commonest features are only one affected gene can produce the disease. No male preponderance as in X-linked recessive disorders. All the daughters of affected male will also be affected. Males have only one X chromosome, that is, hemizygous males always show aggravated disease. No father to son transmission. You can see here affected father. Both the sons are unaffected because father gives only Y chromosome, and this is a X-linked dominant, so the daughter is affected. Affected mother, yes, she can give disease to the son. Examples: Fragile X syndrome, X-linked hypophosphatemia, Rett syndrome, also called as cerebrotropic hyperammonemia, Alport syndrome, focal dermal hypoplasia or Gold syndrome. Then XG blood group system, this is normal blood grouping of any disorder. Then X-linked recessive disorders, you can see here expression homozygous female, homozygous female, then only affected case. Heterozygous female will always be a carrier, you can see here. So these are the heterozygous females carrier. Hemizygous male, because the male has only one X chromosome, so they will be affected. Common characteristics: the heterozygous female is a carrier and the homozygous female is affected case. As males carry only one X chromosome, they have the disease. Sons of the affected mother are always affected. Sons of the affected mother are always affected. You can see here the sons of the affected mother are always affected. Then more common in males. More common in males. Examples: Duchenne muscular dystrophy, glucose 6 phosphate dehydrogenase deficiency, hemophilia A, hemophilia B, Christmas disease. Then Becker's muscular dystrophy, X-linked ichthyosis, X-linked agammaglobulinemia or Bruton syndrome, red ring color blindness, Barth syndrome or 3-methyl glutaconic aciduria type 2, then Leishman syndrome or juvenile gout, hyperuricemia, Nori disease, cataract, leukorrhea and blindness, then Fabry disease. So Y-linked inheritance, males of all generations are affected. You can see every generation male is affected. Then Y, because the father transmits Y, and here also the father transmits Y. That's why this is Y-linked inheritance, also called Hollandric inheritance. Few examples: webbed toes, porcupine man, thick, dark, scaly and rough skin, hypertrichosis, pinna. Mitochondrial inheritance. The mitochondrion contains deoxyribonucleic acid, also called mitochondrial DNA. They contribute for 37 genes, that means they code for 37 genes. You can see the mutated DNA in the mitochondria being transferred to the zygote. Examples, you can see here mutations in cytochrome B gene in mitochondrial DNA results in excess intolerance, mitochondrial DNA deletion, Kearns-Sayre syndrome, mitochondrial myopathy, again mitochondrial DNA deletion, Pearson syndrome, mutated mitochondrial DNA, myoclonic epilepsy. Then you can also see mutated mitochondrial DNA can result in Leigh syndrome and Leber's hereditary optic neuropathy. Polygenic inheritance. In polygenic inheritance, a group of genes interact with each other to produce a disease. It does not follow Mendelian inheritance. It depends on multiple genes. Also depends on environmental factors, variable expression, in all individuals. So the incidence of condition is greater in relatives of the affected individual than in general population. The risk is greatest for the first degree relatives. Consanguinity increases the risk. Polygenic inheritance probably produces bell-shaped curve. So examples, cleft lip, cleft palate, congenital heart defects, neural tube defects, pyloric stenosis, talipes, CTV, congenital talipes equinovarus. Then adult onset diseases like diabetes, mellitus, epilepsy, glaucoma, hypertension, depression, schizophrenia, asthma, and spondylitis. So codominant inheritance. Codominant genes are expressed simultaneously to produce a phenotype. Example, gene A and gene B are expressed simultaneously to produce AB blood group. Intermediate inheritance. Some genes in the heterozygous state also get expressed to a certain extent but not like dominant genes. Like earlier I gave example of law of incomplete dominance, whereas red and white flowers when they pollinated resulted in pink flowers. You can see here sickle cell trait, heterozygous state, patient do not have severe anemia such as a homozygous patient, but trait cases are not normal individuals, they have minimal effect. So expression of sickle cell trait is intermediate inheritance. So sex-limited traits, sex-limited genes are present in both the sexes but expressed only in one sex and in another remain turned off. These gene traits are called sex-limited traits. Example, development of facial hairs in male and breast in female. Sex-influenced traits. So some genes inherit as autosomal traits that get influenced by sex. Example, pattern of baldness influenced by the testosterone. So what is pleiotropy? This condition occurs when one gene influences many unrelated phenotypic traits. Example, in phenylketonuria, so enzyme phenylalanine hydroxylase is deficient. In addition to phenylketonuria, the child develops hypopigmentation and mental retardation. You can also see the same effect in galactosemia with liver cirrhosis, cataract, and mental retardation. So incomplete penetrance. Penetrance means the proportion of individuals carrying the mutated gene with clinical symptoms. So incomplete penetrance indicates non-expression of the mutated gene due to influence of other genes. Example, BRCA1 mutation produces breast cancer only in some females. And you can also see the polydactyly gene. Some individuals have incomplete extra finger and some have a complete extra finger. So with this basic thing, we have seen Mendel's laws and in detail about the monogenic inheritance disorders or Mendelian disorders. Thank you.